Hello everybody and welcome to the third episode of my current and ongoing review series for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9 The JoJoLands. As some of you are already no doubt aware, this episode is quite delayed. I did a community post on my channel, but if you didn't see that, then I'll just quickly explain it now. So basically, I was supposed to, put out this review for Chapter 3 of Part 9 manga. I was supposed to do this, not long after it came out, like I have done for the first two reviews I did for Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. But unfortunately, that week was just a very busy week for me. There was a lot of things going on in, my personal life that I just didn't allow me the time to sit down like I am now and just talk about this chapter. But yeah, I've finally found the time now to just sit down and kind of go over it. I'm not intending this to be a very long one. Even as I sit down here now, I honestly don't have that much time to go super in detail about it. Quite luckily, this isn't one that I really have a lot to say about this chapter, so, hopefully that kind of works out. But yeah, obviously I will have some things to say about it. But yeah, so that's pretty much just the explanation of what happened. I just didn't have the time, and I really don't have much time now at the moment. But I just want to sit down and I want to get this out and done before the end of the month. So that's what we're doing right now, I guess, at the moment. But well, let's just get into it. So we start this chapter pretty much picking up immediately where we left at the end of chapter 2. Jodio has discovered that the Japanese tourist that Meryl has sent them after is indeed the infamous manga artist Rohan Kishibe. I went into, not a rant, but I did a kind of little thing at the end of the previous chapter review where I kind of gave my thoughts on whether or not I think this is the Rohan from the main universe, so part 4 Rohan, or if this is, the alternate universe version of Rohan. I still think this is the alternate universe version of Rohan. There are little things that kind of are the same between both Rohans, especially the Rohans that you see in the Thus Spoke Rohan Kishibe series. But yeah, so this, it very much still looks like him, and personally for me, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but I'm not a big fan of Rohan. I think he's alright and I do like him, but he's not my favourite character ever. Some people adore Rohan, and I understand why, but he was just never that type of character to me. He never meant that much to me. I enjoyed his role in part 4. I think he played that very well. That's really the most I can say about Rohan, to be honest. So, him being in part 9 now, I think it's crazy. It was certainly unexpected. I couldn't believe it when I saw that he showed up at the end of chapter 2. But, now that it's been a month and, we've had time to kind of sit on it and accept it, and now we've seen him here, I'm not against it, but there was definitely other characters that I think I personally would have liked to have seen more. But I think, be interesting to see how Rohan is handled in part 9. He definitely seems a bit more, I don't know, I guess I kind of want to say chilled, but yeah, we don't really get a lot from him here. He's just kind of most of the time he's just swimming in the pool, and then he has a couple lines of dialogue at the end. But basically, going back to the main story, Jodio is basically just freaking out. He can't believe that he's here in the hotel or the holiday mansion of this manga artist he knows. Basically what I've seen, which is quite funny, a lot of people compare this to, is this is basically if you broke into a holiday mansion and Araki was there. Be oh shit, this is a guy whose work I really like. And that kind of marking out period of kind of oh wow, I can't believe I'm here. And Jodio does the same thing, which I think is fantastic. And I think is a good example of yes, we've seen these kind of deep dives into kind of the personality and the mindset and the psyche of Jodio in terms of he is very, I wouldn't say damaged, but he has a lot of issues. Obviously in the last chapter we got a little bit of the flashback scene where he's diagnosed as being psychotic or something like that. These little things that Jodio, as much as he has a loving environment around him in terms of his family, he has these psychological issues. But at the same time, he's still 15. He's still a kid in some ways. So I think it was a good thing that we got a bit of a preview into kind of hey, here's Jodio marking out about a manga artist he really likes. Because I think most people would do that regardless of the age. But yeah, basically, and he sees, he's going through a kind of unfinished manuscript, and he's freaking out over that. We then cut to the inside of the mansion as Dragona, Paco and Usagi are trying to break in, and we see smooth operators again, and Dragona using smooth operators to break into the mansion, which I thought was really cool. I was really glad to see smooth operators again. And basically, they're just searching the place and they're trying to find the safe, and there's a really, really funny moment here. Probably as a scene, my favourite scene from this chapter. Not my favourite panel, I'll hopefully talk about my favourite panel towards the end, but my favourite scene in this chapter was the part where Dragona is trying to search the couch or something for the diamond, diamond, and she's like, she goes to turn around to talk to Paco and Usagi, and I'm like, oh, by the way, like, we're just here for the diamond, we don't steal anything else, we're not here for anything else. If you do, it could get us in trouble when we try to get back to our home on the other island in Hawaii. And as she's saying this, she turns around and Paco and Usagi are literally just ramming shit in their pockets, in their bags. It's so funny. Like, that just really, like, when I saw that, that just really tickled me. I thought it was just a really funny way of like writing it and the paneling of it, and just, you know, Dragona like literally turning around and being like, oh, by the way, don't steal anything, and as she's saying it, they're just completely stealing a ton of stuff. Then we get another bit of a chaotic scene where Usagi's like, because this is after Dragona says like, oh, like, check, you know, behind things, behind paintings, behind TVs, like, find a safe. And so after she says this, Usagi just goes up to this painting, which clearly looks, you know, quite expensive, and just goes, and then just pulls out scissors from nowhere and just shreds the whole painting apart, and then once he's just completely cut the painting apart and, you know, it's in shreds and he's just staring at like a concrete wall, he's like, oh yeah, no safe here. And it's like, like, you just destroyed a painting for no reason. And that's the thing where it's like, I just really like the chaotic energy of this group. It's just really fun. Like, obviously not all of them are eye to eye or even really friends, like as a lot of the dialogue at the start of chapter 1 where it's like Jodio saying like, to be honest, like me and Paco, like, we're not really friends, and I really like that, and I just think this is going to be a really entertaining group for that. And, you know, this is going to be a long time away. This could be, you know, years before we ever get to like this point, but it's going to be a shame when like these characters inevitably start dying. But yeah, so just a really fun group, and I'm just really enjoying their dynamic and everything. So after Usagi just kind of like destroys this painting for no real reason, we get a panel here that I think for now seems kind of random, and no, not so much random, but kind of seems unimportant. But I actually think this is going to be a big deal later on, because we see Paco just completely ignore Dragona and still pocket some of Rohan's money, and I think this is going to come back to bite them in the ass. Personally, I think once this fight is done with and kind of like it's obviously the main group and Rohan, you know, left over, I think there's going to be a moment where like Rohan, like, they're going to have like built up, I think, a bit of Rohan's trust in terms of like, we helped each other defeat this stand user in this stand, and then afterwards Rohan's going to realise that Paco's stolen money from him, and I think that's going to like really ruin the whole kind of like brief unity this group and Rohan had. That's my personal assumption. I don't know if it's going to go that way, but I think the fact that Araki has like focused on Paco stealing this money, I think it's likely that this is going to come back in some way, but I think the way it's going to come back is basically in a way that bites Paco and the others in the ass. So I think there's going to be a moment where I think maybe even the others kind of turn on Paco for a bit, and Paco kind of like, not so much like leaves or anything like that, but I think there could just be some friction for a bit between like Paco and the others in terms of like, man, like, we could have had Rohan on our side, but you fucked it. So yeah, that's my kind of assumption. Whether or not that goes that way, I don't know, but that's my kind of like random guess at the moment. And then what's probably the most interesting part of this chapter, and I think what is ultimately going to at least lead to what the main plot of this whole part bit like ends up being. Obviously we know it's the whole like, oh, Jodio saying I'm going to get rich quick. We don't know how he's going to, you know, get rich, but I think the source of him eventually becoming rich and what is essentially the start of the journey we're going to be going on in this part, because obviously chapter 3 we are insanely early. We are like not even in the baby steps of this part yet. Like, we have so much more to go before we eventually like get to the real like meat and potatoes of what this part is going to be. I think at the moment, I think it's going to come back to here when Dragona and the others go into basically what is a lab, and there's just tons of shit and rocks and beakers and flasks on the floor and, you know, on these tables. And it's really interesting because at first I was like, what the hell? Like, I honestly, at first my immediate thought was that Rohan was a rock human, and I don't think that's going to be the case, but like, I think that'd be so crazy if like Rohan ended up being a rock human. But basically they investigate it, and at the same time Jodio has like found Rohan's tablet with a bunch of his photos on it, and basically it seems like Rohan has been traveling, not so much maybe across the world, but he's at least been traveling across Hawaii, like taking photos of like volcanoes and stuff like that. So clearly there's like a correlation that these are like volcanic rocks, or at least like dried lava, and this is kind of confirmed by Usagi when they all look at the table and the flasks and the beakers and all that, and he basically says that this is kind of like, I don't know, I'm not going to bother pronouncing it, it's basically just lava that's, you know, hardened up or something, but yeah, it's still interesting that like Rohan is collecting lava. Like, clearly this is like a big question that's not going to get answered anytime soon, but this is definitely leading to something that at the moment I feel like might be the first kind of steps that we're going to end up taking towards getting to the actual main plot and the main premise of this part is going to be. So I think that's very interesting, and it'll be interesting to like look back at this chapter like later on and see what part of this ended up being kind of like a on the nose but hidden kind of hint to where we're going to be later. So I think that's very interesting. So as Jodio is obviously seeing all these pictures of the volcanoes and all that stuff that Rohan's been taking, we then get some pictures of Bakin, which is a dog that Rohan gets. I don't know exactly which Thus Spoke chapter that Bakin first shows up in, but it's one of the later ones, I'm sure. But I think this is a little nod that I think is just going to raise more questions about Rohan that obviously I feel like is the intent. I said at the end of the last chapter review that I feel like a lot of what Araki's doing with Rohan here is done purely just to mess with people and just kind of make them kind of second guess everything about universes and all this stuff. But like I said, I'll get to that. We then get the first appearance of what is a very odd looking cat, and it's kind of brushed off, but it's something worth noting, obviously. So after this, Rohan finally leaves the pool, which obviously freaks Jodio out because it's like Rohan is actually heading into the house, which is obviously a problem. At this time, obviously, he radios Dragona and the others who are still trying to find the safe. And, Jodio's like, you need to get out of here. He's coming in now. And Dragona's like, but still trying to find it. Like, obviously, we're going to try and find it. We can't really waste time to come back here another day. And then as they're talking, they eventually find the safe as Rohan is trying to come in. So obviously, it's the timing of it is awful. So as Dragona starts using smooth operators to actually break into the safe after they found it, Rohan is he's actually fully walked into the mansion. So obviously things are getting tense. He's basically gonna walk around the corner at any moment and see them. So Jodio decides to use November Rain. It's enough for Rohan to notice it, and obviously he comes back out because he realizes hang on. At first he's oh, this is a sun shower, but it's only at one specific point. And then we actually see a very interesting ability that November Rain can do, where by the looks of it he can pass objects through the rain, because the rain lands on a cactus that's near Rohan, but Rohan actually gets pricked by one of the cactus needles, and you see the cactus needle in the raindrops. I think this is going to be a very useful way of Jodio, a way for him to use November Rain. So very, very cool stuff. I thought that was very neat. And obviously this, alerts Rohan, and at this point he's very suspicious because he notices the cat as well not long after this, and it's definitely that thing of now at this point the cat is very suspicious. We've seen it multiple times, and at this point this is when Rohan is hang on, whose cat does this belong to? And then that's when Jodio's oh shit, if Rohan doesn't know whose cat this is, and I don't know whose cat this is, whose cat is this? And then that's when things kind of start going from bad to worse, as eventually Dragona and the others manage to actually break into the safe, where Usagi sees the cat again. So he's now noticing that this cat is there, and he tries to be hang on, who's that cat? And this cat keeps showing up, what's going on? But he was no, we've broken in, forget the cat for now, it's not important. And they finally see the diamond, but what's more interesting than the diamond is there is a piece of the volcanic rock that we've seen earlier, but it's in the safe. And that is, to me, is the most interesting thing about all of this, is that is this specific bit of rock going to end up being really important later on? I don't know, we'll have to see, but it's still very interesting. They of course leave the rock, because why would they take the rock? And they take the diamond, and they're okay, time to go, we need to get out of here right now. And as they leave, a piece of string wraps around Paco's ankle, and he immediately goes down, and they all collide into each other. And then that's when obviously things get from worse to just awful, because the rope starts tightening and there's no way for Paco to get it off. But obviously he's freaking out, because if this gets any tighter it's going to cut off his foot probably. And then as Dragona is obviously trying to help, they look down and they now have rope around their arms. So obviously there's two of them down now, and while Usagi's just standing there in shock at what's happening, he sees phantom floating string coming towards them, and he actually manages to leap in the air just in time and dodges the bit of string that's floating around. And obviously they all notice this as that's really weird, why is there just string floating around? And Usagi actually notes hang on, I can see through it, it's translucent or transparent. And then it kind of just vanishes. But obviously they're too busy to kind of really care about that, because as for Paco and Dragona, this rope is getting tighter and tighter, and they're shouting at this point, I can't get it off, I help, and Usagi's freaking out, because he's not even concentrating on them, he's concentrating on the cat, where's the cat? Where'd the cat go? And obviously Paco and Dragona are who gives a shit about the cat? Help us. And then that's when Usagi finally points out, you don't get it. The cat did this. This string is from the cat. We're being attacked by a stand right now. And then obviously that's the dramatic moment. And then we get to Rohan, and he's kind of putting things together, because he's I don't know who this cat is. This cat is just, I've never seen this cat before. I don't know who it belongs to. Now this rainstorm has just randomly appeared in this one spot and then went away really quickly. And then that's when he's kind of twigged, there's somebody here, somebody's at this mansion. And that's when Jodio, rings the rest of the group and is we've got a big problem. Rohan can see them. Obviously them being stands. And then that's where the chapter ends. So obviously Jodio is now aware that Rohan is a stand user. So not a long chapter, not a lot really going on, but like I'll say in a minute, I'm fine with that. But yeah, so that's where the chapter ends, so we'll get into kind of the closing thoughts and things and speculations at the end of the chapter now. So yeah, before I got ahead of myself there, I was about to say was that I'm fine with this chapter not being that big and detailed and with lots of like story elements and deep dives into characters, because ultimately I realised that this is very much going to be like the first part of the first fight of this, entire part. The main reason I know this, right, is that it doesn't happen with every chapter, but a lot of the time when he releases the chapters individually, like as they come out in like obviously at the time Weekly Shonen Jump and now Ultra Jump, when these come out, they have obviously their name. Like the name of this chapter is, I don't actually know what this chapter is called. This chapter is called Search for the Diamond in the Mansion. So like a pretty basic name, like it vaguely kind of goes over what like the whole premise of this chapter is going to be. But when this whole chapter gets volumized with the other chapters, the name of this chapter is changing, and it will be changed to something part 1. So yeah, and in that sense, like I'm aware of that. Like I know that like this is the first part of what is going to be the first fight of JoJoLands. So I can kind of forgive this chapter for not being not so much exciting, but like the first 2 chapters I think were so strong because just in terms of writing, like it was just so interesting the way Araki was setting things up and setting up Jodio. And chapter 2, had some really great scenes. Like yeah, it wasn't as good as chapter 1, but like that's fine because chapter 1 was so strong, and I kind of knew chapter 2 probably wasn't going to be as good. So I'm fine with that, and I kind of understand for this one, for chapter 3, like this one's probably not going to be as good as the previous 2 chapters. So yeah, I thought this was a good chapter. Is it as good as the first 2? No. But like I said, it didn't need to be. It just needs to set things up in an interesting way, which I think it has. Like, I have a lot of questions, mainly from, Rohan and all these volcanic rocks he's got in his safe around this mansion. So yeah, I think in that sense, they've done a great job. I think this was a really fun chapter. More great stuff from the crew, from Jodio and the others. My favourite panel, honestly, was probably the actual, title page for this chapter. The one where it's got Paco, Jodio, Dragona, and Usagi in, the 4 boxes. That was probably honestly my favourite one because I think in some sense it was just nice getting a close-up shot of each character. Outside of that, I really have nothing else left to say for this chapter. It was good. I'm very interested in seeing where things go. I'm interested in seeing the rest of this fight. I think the cat is the stand user, but I think there's another character with another stand that is probably going to get introduced later in this fight, who's kind of the one who sent the cat in. I basically think there's another team, or at least another individual who wants Rohan's diamond. Maybe not even the diamond, maybe he wants the rock, and then that's when the group find out oh shit, the rock is the actual treasure that was worth stealing, not this diamond. The diamond was just the distraction. For us, we got caught by the distraction for the diamond. The real treasure that the real people are after is this rock. That's how I think it's going to go, but we'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, I'm very interested in seeing what's going on here. But yeah, I'm going to leave things here. I've got nothing else really to say except for just rambling in circles, so I shall see you all later. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.